when you walk into a negotiation, if your context is, I am afraid of losing this deal, right? You may not admit it to yourself, but if that's what's there deep down, that's your context. That's the energy you're going to be coming from. Those are the signals you're going to be thrown off no matter what you try to, change or mask. So you got to work on your context and create an empowering context coming into the negotiation.
Welcome to the Fueling Deals Podcast, the podcast that teaches how to accelerate your business growth through all types of deals. It's time to fuel up, so buckle in with your host, Corey Kupfer.
There are only two ways to grow your business: organically through sales and marketing and providing great products and services, and inorganically through deals. Too many companies focus only on the first way, organic growth. Welcome to the podcast, which will help accelerate your business growth inorganically. My guests are a huge variety of deal makers and experts on all types of deals who have personal experience that can help you grow, get clear, learn best practices, and avoid mistakes. We discuss everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. Today is a solo cast, and we'll be continuing the series of talking about key elements from my Authentic Negotiating book and key elements on how to negotiate authentically and have what I call true negotiating success. In the last couple of solo casts, we talked about my fundamental framework of CDE, clarity, detachment, and equilibrium. Today, I want to talk about, to start with, the top 5 steps to being a great negotiator. And some of these are sort of the opposite of the 6 things, pitfalls to avoid, that create failure in negotiation. But some things to be learned looking at it from the other side. So what are the top 5 ways to be a great negotiator, or steps to be a great negotiator? 1 is to create and stay connected to a powerful context. 2 is being willing to do what it takes to get to your truth. 3 is identifying and fully owning your value. 4 is always be in integrity. And 5 is having high expectations. So let's go through each of them. First, create and stay connected to a powerful context. What do I mean by context? Well, we're going to talk about this more in the CPR exercise, which I'll do in a future podcast, which is one of the most powerful tools I know on how to really prepare for a successful negotiation, how to maintain clarity, detachment, and equilibrium, and how to be successful. But context is sort of the waters you swim in. It's your being level, right? Too many of us focus on doing, and a lot of the trading in negotiation is about that, right? I talk about all the time. I've talked on the last couple of solo casts about how it's all about tactics, countertactics, and that kind of stuff. That's a lot of doing stuff. What do I say now? How do I respond to X? But people underestimate the being level. Right? In other words, who are you when you walk into that deal? What is the energy you're in? If you are, as I've mentioned before, an energy of anger, upset, ego, scarcity, fear, you name it, then you're going to be in trouble. Okay? And I don't care what action you take above that, people are able to read it. Okay? And, one of the things that I alluded to, but I didn't go into as much detail on the last solo cast around, fear. So, people can sense it, right? You can't hide it. You can't mask it. You don't want to spend time trying to mask it. You want to get rid of it. Well, with any kind of emotion, here's the thing you have to understand. Yes, people can read your body language. And, there's all kinds of stats that show the majority of our communication does not come from our speaking, but from our tone and our body language. And like I said on, episode 21, Greg Williams talked about that. But also, right, we have something called microfacial expressions. And there's something like, 40-something muscles in the face, and they combine to make hundreds of microfacial expressions. So we are giving out signals all the time physically, even if you don't believe in transfer of energy, which, by the way, I do. Quantum physics says everything is energy. When we were kids, or some of us were older, when we were kids, we grew up with this concept of matter and energy. This table that I'm tapping on now that my mic is sitting on, was matter, and then energy, energy was energy. Well, no, everything's energy. It's just in a different density, a different vibration, a different form. So if everything is energy, I do believe that we give off signals and that we can energetically sense when somebody is in fear or in anger or in upset or scarcity or out of integrity or whatever. But even if you don't believe in it, that right, we have body language, we have tone, we have microfacial expressions and you can't control those. So the work to create a powerful context, when you walk in there, because context is like culture, right? There's this big move in companies, and this is a saying that they say, you either create your culture or it's created by default. Like there's always a culture in a company. It's either consciously created or it's created by default. The same thing with context. You always have a context when you walk into a negotiation. You always have a context for everything you do. You have a context for your personal relationship. You have a context for your health. You have a context for your level of self-love and confidence. When you walk into a negotiation, if your context is, I am afraid of losing this deal, right? You may not admit it to yourself, but if that's what's there deep down, that's your context. That's the energy you're going to be coming from. Those are the signals you're going to be thrown off no matter what you try to, change or mask. So you got to work on your context and create an empowering context coming into the negotiation. There's a lot of ways, we talk about doing that in the book. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The CPR, context is they're going to teach. So the CPR methodology is one of the key ways to do it. So look out for solo cast 1 or 2 more from now where I'll talk about that. But do what you need to do to get clear on who you're going to be walking into the room. From a place of clarity, from a place of confidence, going through that clarity, detachment, and equilibrium framework that I teach and that I talked about a couple episodes ago makes a big difference in that, right? You come in a place of detachment to a negotiation, that's a much stronger context than scarcity, or fear. So that's number one. You need to create it consciously, the context, and then you need to do some of these exercises to be able to stay connected to it during the negotiation. Okay. What's the next one? Be willing to do what it takes to get to your truth. Well, in the last 2 solo casts, I talked about the concept of clarity, which is the fundamental, starting point of my framework: clarity, detachment, equilibrium. And then I talked about lack of preparation being one of the key reasons negotiations fail, and how you have to prepare. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is just sort of the deeper cut on that. It's being willing to get to your truth means that you're not going to just do a surface level preparation. That even when I talk about internal preparation, right, to get to your place of clarity, right? So not only external information, but internal truing up to get to that clarity. That's a self-exploration journey. And it's hard sometimes to get out of our ego or admit that we're afraid or admit that we're in a place of scarcity, right? It's easy to have some bravado and, or avoidance or denial around that. And if you don't do that work to get to your, and fully own, where you are, get to that level of truth, dig down deep, you're going to be in trouble. So do that inner work. Number 3, identify and fully own your value. This is a huge one, okay? And this comes up for everybody. I will say, however, and, the negotiating experts that I know, so for example, Cindy Watson was on episode 31. She trains a lot of women in negotiation. And pretty much everybody I've talked to, women who train women in negotiation, agree with me on this, that in general, women have a big issue with this. Everybody does. I want to start there. But it's something that's even more so with women, because there's a socialization, of women to be less inclined to own their value, to stand for who they are, to speak out their voice, to ask for that promotion or raise, things like that. Now, listen, I want to say any gender generalization that I'm making, of course, is not true across the board. And even using the concept of male and female in a binary way, not everybody identifies that way. So I'll throw those caveats out. But in general, my experience has been, and most other negotiating experts that I know, is that owning your value is a key to everybody, and it's something that women need to focus on even more. So what do I say about owning your value? Well, you got to do the work. If you're going to quote a price, for example, whether it's at an hourly rate or project fee or a fee for your goods and services, you're going to be much more successful. In fact, you will be unsuccessful if you don't really believe that you're worth that. Your product's worth that. Your service is worth that. Because again, like I said, in talking about some of the other stuff, you're going to give off that energy. People can understand that. If you're not, if you can't own it, they're not going to own it. So you got to do the work to own that value. And when I set my rates for whether it's my hourly rates as a lawyer or my rates, my speaking fees, my workshop fees, I do a couple of things. I do that external research to find out, what the market is and what, people are paying and charging and whatever. And that's information. But I don't stop there. What I do is I sit down and really think on an internal basis. I literally get into almost a meditative state and hold that number. Can I charge $800 as a lawyer as I do right now? Right? Well, yeah. And I'll tell you why, because I'm going to give value at or more than that amount, right? Same thing with my workshops. Can I charge X for a half day workshop, full day workshop? Yeah, these people are going to get value at or definitely exceeding what I'm charging, right? I am confident in that. And here's the thing. If you can't say that, then you have to rethink what you're charging. You want to do the work to get things up. I tell a great story in the book that Jack Canfield tells about how when he was a teacher. So Jack Canfield, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, the best-selling book series in the history of the world. He was a teacher in the 60s and 70s, I believe, school teacher. And he would do some talks on the side. And back then, I think the numbers were he was charging $400 a talk. And he was fine doing that. But then he spoke to one of his colleagues, and they were talking about a talk his colleague was giving, and it was similar to the ones that Jack was doing. And his colleague, was charging $1,200. And Jack, congratulated him. But then was thinking afterwards, wait a second, he's charging $1,200 for a talk, 3 times what I'm charging. I'm at least as good as him. I think I'm better than him. How is he getting $1,200 a talk? Right. Well, obviously, the guy was able to value himself at 3 times the amount that Jack was at the time. So the next time that Jack had an opportunity to pitch for a talk, somebody asked him what he would charge, and he couldn't bring himself to say $1,200. He really couldn't own it. So, but instead of $400, he said $800. And the person who was booking the conference or the speaking opportunity said to him, no problem. and Jack said, just out of curiosity, what would have been a problem? And the guy said, well, we had $1,500 in the budget for the speaker. So Jack honored the $800 that he asked for, right? Because that's what he asked for, and that was the right thing to do. But the next time he had an opportunity to be asked what he was charging for a talk, he said $1,500, and they said, we have $1,200 in the budget. And he said, good, I'll take it. So now he's up to making 3 times what he did previously. Now, was he a better speaker in those number of months that it took that time? No. What happened? He understood. He was triggered originally by someone else charging more, which had him question, wait a second, am I undercharging? Am I more, this guy can get it, I'm as good as him. Maybe, I need to understand I'm more valuable. Originally, he couldn't fully own that additional value, so he only went up from $400 to $800, and then understood that people would have paid him even more, and then he was able to get up to the $1,200. Well, that's what I recommend that you all do, right? If you're in a position where you're, providing a product or service or charging an hourly rate, you should look at the highest number that you can confidently own, that you're going to provide value at or beyond, and you should charge that. If that is below market or below what the comparable people are charging, do the internal work to figure out why you can't own that, right? It could be a lot of past-based stuff. It could be just lack of knowledge. It could be, do that external and internal work to figure out a way to push those numbers up. And then when you are confident that you provide value, that's when people will book you at those rates, probably your services at those rates, right? I don't have issues with my rates because I know, and I give off an energy, and it's not from a place of ego, it's from a place of clarity that people are going to get value beyond, what I'm providing. And as long as they understand, people will test you sometimes. Sometimes people say to me, hey, this other attorney, this other speaker, this other trainer, charges X. And my answer is always not from some place. This is not like a tactic. I really believe it. I always say to them, listen, if they charge half, 3/4, whatever it is, what I charge, and you think that you can get the same amount, at least the same amount of value that I can provide you, you should go with them. And I really mean that. I mean that. If somebody else can do as good of a job on a deal as I can as a lawyer or a negotiation or training or as a speaker or as a professional negotiator, and they charge less, then you should go with them. Frankly, I don't think that's usually the case because people often charge less, aren't, or by the way, they may just not be owning their value, and maybe they are great attorneys, but the fact that they're not owning their value would concern me. But you know what? If it's the case, you should do it. And it's frankly rare that people end up going that way. A lot of times when they raise that thing, they're just sort of really testing whether you really believe you're worth it, because they don't want to believe you're worth it unless you do, and they don't, they're not going to be out ahead of you. They're actually going to be, more skeptical than you are, and they're not going to, hold you in higher value than you do. So, you got to do that work to own your value. It's absolutely crucial. So that was number 3 in the top, 5 ways to be a great negotiator. Number 4 is always be in integrity. Always be in integrity. Now, Of course, I'm talking about in terms of, holding, strong morals and ethics. But what I mean more so is being aligned with your inner truth, right? I talked about this, lack of integrity. I talked about as in the last podcast, as one of the top 6 reasons negotiations fail. Well, this is the opposite of it. If you're always truing up to your inner truth, if you're always truing up to that compass and staying, and staying in that truth, or at least when you get thrown off, doing what you need to do to take a break, to do, some of the things that I teach to get you back aligned, and you can stay in integrity with yourself, right? Meaning that you are aligned, the deal feels right to you, etc. All that kind of stuff lines up with the inner truth. Then you're going to do a better deal. That's a key thing. And people who are great negotiators trust those instincts and are able to tune into them. Finally, in the 5th way to be a great negotiator is have high expectations. There have been studies out there that a number of studies that show that if you hold high expectations, you're much more likely to get a better result. So if you go into a negotiation from a place of low expectations or fear or any of that kind of stuff, then you're going to get a worse result. So do the work to hold high expectations. Now, listen, it may or may not work out that way. You may say, I'm definitely going to get this deal done. You don't get it done, but that's when you go back to your detachment and you're okay with not getting it done. But that doesn't mean you go into a negotiation saying, oh, low chance we're going to get it done. Because that's gonna hurt you. You're gonna come in with the right energy, the right context. If you're holding higher expectations, and if you, I know I link on my website on CoreyKupfer.com to some of the studies on the Pygmalion effect and some other things that show about holding high expectations and how that positively impacts anything in life. By the way, anything, whether you're trying to make a sale, get a client, successfully run a marathon, or go into a negotiation, holding high expectations is a key. So listen, those are the top 5 ways to be a great negotiator. Notice, again, I did not say learning a tactic or countertactic is one of the top 5 ways. It's useful if you're doing the ones that are, that are authentic, that are in integrity, that are not manipulative. But if you want to add those on top of these 5, do that internal work for true negotiating success. And with that, I want to thank you, Fueling Deals listeners, for tuning in. Remember, there's only one difference between companies that grow inorganically and those that don't. And it's unrelated to size, amount of capital, or any other factor, other than that the owners and executives of companies that do deals make a decision to do deals, and then they take action. It's time to refuel. So until next week, Corey Kupfer signing out.
Thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to leave Fueling Deals a rating and review on iTunes and Google. Check out all our episodes at fuelingdeals.com to find out more resources to accelerate your business growth.